gonna be episode 13, I think, because Annie K will be 12. This will be 13. We're getting back to basics. We're getting back to what we pulled out of the jar.
Like a month ago?
A long time ago.
A long time ago.
We're talking about Christians and food.
Food.
Our best laid plans was to have food everywhere. But we have jobs. So we didn't make a bunch of food.
We ate all the food that we've made between then and now.
If I had brought up what I had made for dinner, I would have brought up one breadstick, some salmon patties, and some macaroni and cheese. It would have smelled funny.
I don't even know what we're having for dinner. I hope Val has something for dinner, because but we didn't have anything for dinner.
Christians and food! Okay, you want me to start?
Mm-hmm.
You start there. Sometimes they overlap.
Yeah, I think it's going to anyway.
Okay, so for people that don't go to church, food is actually a pretty big part of church. At least normal sized churches, not big.
Yeah. No, even for them, I think it just takes
still a
different
big part.
forms.
Food is a big part of church.
I hope. Gosh. What's church without food?
Food has always been a pretty big part of Christian church. Jesus made a pretty big habit of eating with people, meeting with people, making sure that meals were part of what they did together. And then from Paul writing and saying that he heard about what was going on when they were meeting together to take the Lord's Supper. It sounds like people did a lot.
Yeah.
And so now the churches we grew up in have monthly potlucks.
Yeah, like I think all Church of God churches that I've been to have done. We love our potlucks.
Yeah.
And then I read that article, but we'll get to it.
I liked that article. Okay, let's see what I had for notes.
Yeah.
Okay, we use food rightfully. This is one thing that I feel like we get right, at least in the churches I've been in. We use food for fellowship. We use it as a way to show support and love and sympathy. So I guess maybe just like for the fellowship, yeah, we have potlucks. And potlucks are great because after the church service, everybody stays, and everybody at least who's like part of that congregation brings food. Then you all go downstairs and you get food and you eat it together.
Eat it.
That's good. That's how it should be. But we also use food, like if somebody dies or if somebody has surgery and they're off their feet or
has a baby. That's all we ate for like the first week after Tynes was born.
Yeah. Christians are pretty good at realizing like that, hey, this is a very easy way to help somebody. I'll just make a casserole and take it over. So we use food for that sort of thing. But when talking about it like as part of potluck and why that is like actually useful, on the Naked Bible podcast I listened to, they had an episode once about it was about home churches, but one of the guys on there was talking about a church, I think in Atlanta, where they actually would all bring a dish to pass, but they were actually meeting in like a side room at like I think a coffee shop or something. But he was saying that it's actually a really healthy way to worship, because he had some guys that were like, you know, lawyers and doctors who would bring, you know, stuff, but then there also had like homeless people who would like, you know, roll out of the shrubs, go buy some honey buns and bring them. And so like it's a situation where like everybody has to contribute, everybody does contribute. It's like an equalizer, you know. Everybody needs to eat, everybody contributes food. Yeah. I don't know.
Yep. My thought on potluck is, okay, so traditionally Protestants don't dance, they don't do loud music. So what's left to celebrate together? There's food. That's what you're left with.
Yeah.
And so we do it up right, dang it.
Yeah.
And then I read a thing about, this guy was talking about the decline of potlucks and how, like, you can tell it's really going downhill when the church has to order pizza to supplement because there's not enough food. And I was like, there are churches that have to order pizza to supplement that is the saddest thing I've ever heard of in my life.
You know, when I was in high school and I was part of our high school's singing group and we went on tours in the summer, and one of the things that would bum me out so much is that we would go sing in a church and they'd always have a meal for like us and everybody who was there for the show afterwards. And so, like, most of the time it was potluck. And so you're on the road all the time. So breakfast and lunch are always eating out. And you don't have a lot of money, so usually eating out at fast food.
Yeah.
So, like potluck was the only, like, not fast food you get to eat for, like, a month. And every once in a while we'd go to a church where they'd be like, oh, we're going to have a room full of teenagers. Let's just order some pizzas.
And you're all like,
yeah, like, oh, I just want some roast and
some green beans.
some green beans and a roll, please. It used to bum us out, but, you know, you don't say anything, but they just think like, oh, you know, you got a bus full of teenagers.
I wonder how much our potluck ability is the fact that we have a lot of, like, immigrant churches and not white populations. Like Val's church has a lot, like back in Washington State, it's got a lot of people that came from Mexico. And they do potluck like every week.
Yeah.
And it is so good.
Yeah.
I like going and staying with his parents for that. It's like, oh, I'm going to go to potluck and there's going to be legit Mexican food, not this stuff you get in Michigan.
I did 2 tours like that. So I did one on the West Coast. So in like coming up through California, you get quite a bit of good Mexican food. But the other tour I did was in the South, and so in Texas, it was all like Mexican food and barbecue. And so that food-wise, the South is the best tour you want to go on.
I think you told me about going to a Russian church too. Was it Russian?
No, there was just a Russian guy there that kept trying to get us to eat his cabbage rolls.
Oh.
I took one. I did not. He kept telling me and Aaron, he was like, it's cabbage rolls you'll like. You'll like. And he just like, he wasn't like serving it, but he was standing right next to us in line as we went. And so and when we got to the cabbage rolls, he was like, you girls, you take some cabbage rolls you like. And so we're like, okay, thank you. And then when we were done, you know, you'd like take your nap. Oh, because this is what happens. This is something that happens at potluck
protocol.
Everybody, you eat your food, and then the stuff that you didn't like you don't even necessarily know who brought it, so you don't want to throw it in the trash, because then if they go and throw their plate in the trash and they see a plate with their food thrown away, they're gonna feel bad. So you take your napkin and you like cover up the food you didn't want to eat, or you fold it so no one, and you like put it in the trash like a secret, like.
Or you just. Can I take everybody's plates and you stick the other people's
Sometimes
plates
I do try to make sure that when I walk to the trash can, the person whose food I'm throwing away isn't like over there, doesn't see me. Like, you fold it and you take it.
Secret not eating.
Secret not eating. Oh man. Anyways, okay. Yeah, actually, I really liked that article about potluck, and I liked how.
I should have reread it today, but I did not.
Well, the other thing he was saying that's making it struggle is that, like, people in our generation, when they hear dish to pass or potluck, they take for granted that all they need to bring is like a small side dish. And he was saying, like, no, the key to a good potluck is that the families that are really involved bring way more food than their family is going to eat. And our church is really small, and so we have struggled with that. I think we've gotten better and better just because more of us, like young women, have like gotten with the program. Like, if you want to have a good potluck, you cannot bring like one baking dish of cheesy potatoes. Like, you need to bring the cheesy potatoes, and you need to make some cookies, and you need to make sure you bring a 2-liter, and you need to have some meat.
Val's way better at that than I am. Like, he'll make a big casserole every once in a while. We don't actually go to potluck very often, to tell you the truth, because it's kind of hard with a toddler.
And Owasso is so loud.
That's the thing. It's loud.
I lose my voice
like
every time I
crowds.
go to their potluck.
And it's okay during the summer because the students are away, but when the students come back, it's so crowded and it's so loud.
Yeah.
But Val's better at it, because if it's me, I will think of it at the last minute, be like, well, let's heat up some vegetables from the freezer and stick some butter on them and call it good. Although Mom says that that's actually a good thing to take to Owasso, because whenever she's taken canned green beans and canned corn mixed together with butter, it is all gone. People like it there.
Our, Lodi potlucks were so good when I was little. And we always had like a big, long kids'
Because all those
table.
German ladies.
All the kids sat at the kids' table.
And it was fun.
It was fun. And every week there was always ravioli.
Garlic bread.
Aaron Stacy would like put it in a cup and just drink the ravioli down. And there was always taco salad, and so me and Aaron Stacy had a song about taco salad that we would sing in line every week.
And deviled eggs.
There was always deviled eggs. Grandma and Grandpa every week for like my entire life made meatballs.
They took meatballs, I think, for our entire lives
Mhm.
up to this point.
Mhm.
When they did, I mean, they don't go to potluck. But they didn't. Well, Grandpa's, yeah.
Grandpa might still make meatballs.
He might.
Because
He's been the one making
He's
them
the one-
for a while anyway.
yeah. When we were lucky, there was two-tone or
Which is pudding and whipped cream on a
graham cracker.
shortbread
and-
nut crust.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's
really
good.
good. It's really good. There's cream cheese involved too. It's so awesome.
But then there's also like, okay, some of the food like isn't actually good, but I still love it. Like I don't even know where people find the completely bland
Shepherd's pie.
The completely bland boxed macaroni and cheese. I remember when I was little, I loved it. The macaroni and
Yeah.
cheese, it's
How
kind
do
of
you
yellow,
choose that?
kind of yellow, kind of
You
orange,
know,
no flavor, zero flavor.
I think. How do they do that?
I don't know, but I loved it when I was little, and I'll
did
still
too.
eat
I
it.
think part of that effect comes from making it and then bringing it to church, and it's only being eaten like 3 hours later after being reheated in something. That would be my guess.
I mean, I want to say it's good. It's actually not. I just like it.
It's not good, but yeah, it's
But
tasty.
I like it. It's
Honestly,
tasteless.
it didn't have much taste.
No. Yep.
Oh, good
Okay,
times.
I know we probably don't have to talk about potluck the whole
Okay.
time, but potluck
We
has been
probably
a big,
could.
potluck has been a big part of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good for people.
Actually, one of the reasons we don't. Sometimes the reason that we don't go to potluck is because I consistently gain like 1.5 pounds every time I go to potluck.
Well, the thing is, like me and Gabe, because Gabe's family is so close, we have at least a mini potluck every single week.
Yeah.
You know, and actually, the last couple of weeks when I've been making dinners, I've been trying to make like bigger dinners and then just freezing half of it. Because the bad thing about the fact that we have a potluck every week is
you
that
have to bring something.
there's a lot of Saturday mornings where I wake up and I'm just like I have to get up, I have to make breakfast, and then I have to make lunch, and then I have to take a shower, and then we go to church, and like it's a pain. I have to cook 2 meals as soon as I get up Saturday morning, and that's a pain. Anyways.
You have so much more energy than me, because that would be non-sustainable after like 2 weeks.
I'm a high energy person.
Bless your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you.
Mm-hmm. It's nice.
I think I'd have to take meth to have that much energy.
Oh, food for Christians is also like one of the, we have, like at least in our church, we have 2 rituals. Baptism and Lord's Supper. Those are the only 2 things where we get to take like a spiritual idea and use physical symbolism for it. Like those are the only 2 things we get to perform physically, which is one of the reasons why I really
Protestants in general, I don't think are very good at ritual.
no, but I feel like
intentionally.
we do okay with Lord's Supper, and I
the
really
ones we've got, we do okay with.
I really value it because our that part of our lives is so tiny.
You take it really seriously.
Yeah. I love it. Anyway, I don't know. We were talking about Christians and food, so I thought I should probably mention that we use food for one of our only rituals. It's our only yearly ritual.
Then if you're Cog 7, you probably don't eat certain foods as a religious practice.
Oh yeah, I guess I put also for us, food is something you do out of obedience, and at the same time a symbol of obedience.
Because if you're not aware, we don't eat pig products or
Shellfish,
shrimp, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which is way easier than it used to be because lard is passé. Well, it's coming back in now. I'm getting a little nervous because lard is coming back in to, foodie circles. I'm like, no, they're going to put it back in the Hostess cakes.
Yeah.
What are we going to do when there's lard in the Hostess cakes?
Kosher for Passover. I like it when I see those little...
You're like,
You should talk about that part, because then that'll go into this part.
I didn't really have... I didn't develop that the way I was going to.
Oh.
So...
Do you know a lot of stuff about the crazy guy?
The topic is Christians and health food, which has a long and storied history, I say, on my notes here. And I didn't really read about it. But Kellogg, you may have heard of cereal fame, he was big into the health food movement, and part of the reason for that was because he was Seventh-day Adventist. Well, actually, Seventh-day Adventists, I've read or heard some stuff that Seventh-day Adventists actually partly got into health food because of Kellogg, not the other way around.
It wasn't all Ellen G. White?
He was he worked with Ellen G. White.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's what Rachel was telling me. But so whichever came first, the chicken or the egg. Yeah, but he was a freak and a half. He really was. Yeah. I don't remember.
Oh, you know what else I was going to say about, well, you did put, like, on a side note that it's interesting that, like, potlucks probably are declining because mega churches are...
Yeah, I never thought of that if you are in a mega church, that potluck is not as easy as it is when you have, like, a smaller church.
You want my opinion?
Huh.
They should still do it.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. If I was a mega church pastor, yeah, it would. But I mean, you'd have to like announce it for maybe like 2 months and like explain to people what the plan is and like, and then you'd have to make sure that like you'd probably like want to tell people as much as possible, bring in disposable dishes, you know, label anything, and it's up to you to grab it before you leave.
I think the article talked about some mega churches try to solve it by doing them in like the small groups. The small groups will do like mini potlucks.
Yeah.
Or I guess how small does a small group get? I don't really know.
I don't know.
I think
it'd be awesome to have like a 3,000 person potluck though.
I've been to the
at least yearly. I'd want to do it. At least annually.
I've been to the community Thanksgiving that they do in Owasso. That's not thousands, but it's hundreds. Maybe I don't know how many people go through there.
Do they have people sign up ahead of time so that they know they have so many turkeys and so many? Yeah. That's pretty cool. And the other thing I was going to say about potluck, this is just like my bratty note. Well, because I was reading that article about where the guy was talking about
that bratty note.
Why potlucks are kind of suffering and declining right now, and he was saying I think a lot of it is because we really depended on the talents of our mothers and our grandmothers, and that's what made potlucks so amazing, because they knew which dishes would get like the volume they needed, you know, without losing taste, and they knew to bring a ton of food. And
well, they lived through the Depression, so of course they knew how to do that stuff.
But it was making me think that, like, you know, potluck and in general, for a lot of families, food just in general really shows the strength of women to provide and to care for. And potlucks, I would say, definitely. I mean, I would say Keith might be the only man who makes any food in our church and brings it to potluck. I really don't think there's any other man who makes food for potluck.
He makes good pie.
It is only Keith.
And I think that's different in the Owasso church. I think they're a bunch of guys, because you know they hunt and they like to. Some of the guys in that church are into cooking the stuff that they kill.
But so, because like at least in our church, potluck is when the women in the church cook food at home, and then the women get it to church, and the women take it down to the kitchen, and then right after church, the women go and make sure everything is heated up, and the women put it out on the tables, and then everyone eats, and then the women clean up. And so there have been weeks where, not that in my church it gets preached on all the time, but like in sermons or like in conversation after sermon, there was one week where Andrew was preaching about, it might have been Mother's Day or something, because he was preaching about like
field of minds.
Well, he was preaching about women bearing the image of God just as much as men. And you know, and so
awesome Mother's Day.
And so that
especially since that hasn't been the consistent belief throughout church history.
Yeah. So he was trying to say how like womanhood and motherhood is an honor of the character of God as much as manhood and fatherhood.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was nice. But afterwards, it would happen to be a potluck week. So afterwards, we're downstairs, and I hear guys talking about how like I don't think women are worth any less, but but I do think, and this isn't a bad thought to have, but I heard someone saying, women are worth just as much, but you don't need to shy away from the fact or lie about the fact that God did set up a structure, of authority, and that He put men at the top. The Bible says that. we can talk about how it should be implemented, but it does, he wasn't coming out of left field. But at the time, I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, I mean, men like to talk about how they have spiritual authority while they eat my food and then I clean up after them. Wow, that's so Christ-like of you. Like, his example of leadership, I mean, as you sit there and get served the food that I make and then don't even think to throw your plate away or wash your table, while you sit there and enjoy me doing everything for you, just like Jesus had the disciples do everything for him, I mean, I have so much respect for your spiritual authority right now, I can hardly contain myself. I was like, this is a little ridiculous, guys. Who really is the leader in the church if only the women are doing the serving? Because what did Jesus say about the leaders in heaven? They are the servants. So
it's actually one of the things I appreciate about both the Owasso and the Lodi churches is that, like, it was pretty even down the board. Like, there were men that would help with all of that stuff too. It was like, it was mostly the German ladies making the food, but there were guys helping clean up and helping get it ready, and I liked that. That was nice to see. That was probably really healthy for us to see growing up.
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah. That's me bad-mouthing the men in my church. Well, if they don't want me to complain about that, and then and it's not like I have a soft-spoken church, but there's been more than once where afterwards, when we all come together as a family, one or another man would complain about, like, man, our potlucks are really going downhill. And then, like, 3 women say, what did you make? What did you bring?
Snap, snap, snap.
I mean, if Gabe complains about the food at potluck, he just tells me, like, hey, can you make something I like for potluck? At least he's, like, smart enough to just be like, well, women, that I didn't help at all. That sucked. Well, beggars can't be choosers, so...
Oh, can I tell you about a gender, it's not related to food whatsoever. But okay, so I work in a library, and that means that I encounter a lot of books. And I encounter a lot of weird stuff when I'm doing, like, title and author searches. I come up with stuff that, just to be clear, we are not ordering and we do not have in our collection, but it's really weird stuff. So I came across this one that was titled, I don't remember the full title, but part of it was Be Real Bitches. This was a Christian book, and okay, bitches is an acronym. Do you want to know what the acronym is for?
Yes.
Wait for it. Okay, let me see if I can remember it. It's BITCH. Blessings increased through Christ's holiness, or something like that. And I was like, this is the most hilarious thing I've seen all day. You just took a swear word and you turned it into a Christian acronym. I feel like so many things just confluenced for me.
I hope there's a sequel called Bitches Be Trippin', where then she makes an acronym for trippin'.
I immediately started thinking of acronyms for all the swear words that could be put on Christian merchandise. And then I was like, this is really impious thing to be doing, so I stopped.
Have you ever seen on Amazon.com, birth control is evil and robbing Jesus of priesthood babies? Have you seen the one where they put the legs as a raptor?
But I'm amazed that you remembered that full title.
Birth control is evil and robbing Christ or Jesus of priesthood babies. There's one that says, I don't remember if it actually says dinosaur birth control, but it says like dinosaur birth control is evil and robbing raptor Jesus of delicious babies, and they replace the lace face with a raptor. It's so
I
funny.
feel guilty for laughing about that because she's a real person, but it's really funny.
You know what? If you self-publish a book and it's ESL and you don't have someone edit it who speaks good English,
and also if your theology is a little
you don't even know how to unawkwardly title. Like, you've never even read the title out loud to someone? You just never thought to do that? Oh man.
I remember that the most surprising thing about that book is that it's priced at like $100.
I think so. She thinks it's really worth a lot. And there's like...
Which is baffling. Has anybody bought that book?
I don't know. There's lots of
I wonder if
reviews.
it's still on there. It might be gone.
One person was talking about how it worked really well. And then as you like read through the comment, it becomes more and more obvious that they're using it for toilet paper. It's funny. Okay.
Oh dear. Oh,
Anyways...
dear. Oh.
I found one article that wasn't about Christians, but it was about food, and it was about the trend of, well, all the food trends right now that are all, like, coming together. Yeah. I mean, there's the health ones, like gluten, what are the
Don't
carbs?
eat whatever random macronutrient is vilified today.
Yeah. But eat lots of acai berry and millet.
Also known as the colonial diet.
Oh,
that's all I'm like.
And do you remember when we used to say, what did we say? Carbs are out, antioxidants in. You can change it to anything. We used to walk to the grocery store and say that. I think I was in probably like 6th grade or
you're
something.
such weirdos.
Yeah, we were weird. Anyways, all these food trends, so there's the health ones like that, you know, gluten-free, dairy-free, sometimes for people because they have allergies, other times just because people have decided that all of those things are suddenly going to kill you. But then there's also the, like, it needs to be grown locally, it needs to be self-sustaining,
free range, antibiotic, organic.
Yeah, the animals have to be treated completely humanely. So it was talking about how all of those food trends for unreligious people in a more and more unreligious country, it's kind of taking the place that religion used to hold socially, but that also comes with like all the bad things. So it helps people in their it helps give them something where they can get a sense of like purity or keeping themselves from like, you know, it just gives them
it gives a moral standard.
Yeah, it gives you a moral
standard. At least in one area of your life.
Yeah, it gives you one part of your life where you can feel like you are actually making moral choices. Because it's, you know, for a lot of people, they don't get to feel like that. But it's also bringing in like all of the like self-righteousness and us versus them mentality that like we really need to rid religion of. And now, like, even without religion, we still have that because that's
just highlights how this is a human thing,
yeah,
not a religion
it's not
thing.
religion that's making you like
not
that.
there, we'll find something else to do it about.
I thought it was really interesting though. Let me see. I was going to read some of my quotes.
Someone looking for quotes music?
Yeah. Well, I already said some of this.
It should be played. I feel like I should have a clarinet, or do you play clarinet this way?
Clarinet's like this. I have a flute right over there. Oh, that part makes me sad. She was talking about how it brings on all these bad mentalities, and she adds, many seek a fulfillment that cannot be satisfied with food. I was like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
As religion has declined, McCann argues, our obsession with the purity of what's on our plate has grown. It's largely unconscious, she says, but is motivated by a sort of religious impulse that goes unrecognized. Yeah. Sorting out how we should eat seems to become even more fraught. Is it enough to eat food that is generally healthy? Does it also need to be environmentally sustainable? Is limited meat intake okay, or do we need to abstain completely to be virtuous eaters? If someone religious came up and talked to you like that, you wouldn't take it. But when it's about food, you're kind of at a loss. You're like, I can't even engage on this because it makes sense. Or in a sense, they're right. I thought that part was funny too. Yeah, because religion's not that way. Anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. But you see those kinds of attitudes in religious people too, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like increasingly.
Yeah, about food.
Yeah, about
homeschool
food.
moms love to post when they've made like organic, free-range, non-GMO, gluten-free, no-bake cookies. And I'm like, you know, it probably does taste good. It tastes like any no-bake is going to taste good, but I don't care. So
I have mixed feelings because I went through my health food phase, my religious health food phase, partly religious anyway. I had a book It was called, what's it called? God's Way to Ultimate Health, and it's about how all Christians should be raw foodists because that's how God made us, is to be raw foodists, and that miraculous healings come forth when you are a raw foodist.
Engineering is a tool of the devil because God did not make us to create more efficient ways to get our lives done.
I managed to handle raw foodism for like 2 weeks, and I was also making my own bread.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was not sustainable. Not sustainable in the sense that I could not freaking sustain it. Because burgers are delicious. And also some of us have problem metabolizing iron. And we need to eat the meats because the meats are what keep us from dying.
Oh man, this one time Gabe was driving through town with Evie and they were looking for a place and she was like, Dad, there's Arby's. And he was like, I don't want Arby's. And she said, but Dad, they've got the meats. That's marketing in action.
They've got the meats.
It worked. They've got the meats.
What was I going to say? I was going to say something I remember. Although, I will note that I do try to eat a lot of raw fruits and vegetables because I've noticed that if I don't eat enough raw fruits and vegetables, I think that side of it was good, like eating, yeah. But anyway, we don't.
None of eating
I start to feel
is
sick if
bad.
I don't eat raw fruits and vegetables. I start to feel sick.
I mean, none of these eating trends are bad.
Yeah, they're not bad.
It's just
in and
not
of themselves.
necessary, so it's bad to flip out over it. Just like a lot of religious stuff. None of this religious stuff is bad, but it's also
I just
bad
read,
to flip out about it.
Actually, when I was looking for this stuff, and I should have printed out, but I didn't know we were going to go here. There was a woman that was like, okay, I've been reading about all this stuff for like a year. My family's been on this journey, and everything I read freaks me out about some new component in the food. So I'm going to try to make stuff from scratch when I can, but guess what, people? Food is not going to save you. Jesus is going to save you. So let's all just chillax.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's a good perspective.
Yeah.
Food ain't going to save you.
You know, one time at my
We're all
last
gonna
job,
die.
one of the attorneys was talking about how his grandpa, either before or after every dinner, would like eat a tablespoon of butter. And I was saying like, yeah, butter's delicious. Like
That's pretty good.
And then I said something like commending the practice, and then the attorney said something about him, dying of a heart attack at like in his mid-50s, and I was like, everybody dies, but not everybody lives, Jeff. Like, you didn't quite like me saying that. But, like, my point is, worrying about all this stuff too, I'm not gonna run myself ragged trying to make sure that my kids don't ever eat anything that could encourage cancer, because you know what, no matter what you do, a certain percentage of us are gonna die of cancer. And like, we're all gonna die, so I don't know. I don't think it's like
There's a limit to how insane you should
There's a
make
limit to
yourself
how
over it.
insane you should make yourself over it. Yes. I'm going to read the last quote because
That's our informed opinion.
In the last 30 or 40 years, there has been a strong sense that ethical eating is one of the most powerful things individuals can do to affect positive change. I do think that's where a lot of it comes from. I mean, we're suddenly bombarded with like all these stories and images of suffering and injustice all over the world, and this is part of like our culture that probably isn't a bad thing, but I don't agree with. We are being told that if you are not addressing every injustice you are aware of, you are complicit and you are complacent. That's what we're told, but I'm like, no guys, that's bullshit. I don't have time to take a stand on every injustice. I will deal with the injustice I come in contact with, and what I can reasonably take a stand on outside of my personal circumstances. I do not have time to address and care about every single bad thing that's happening in the whole world. No human has time to do that. Don't ask that of us. But I do think that we have that sense that like, what can I do? There's nothing I can do. And then I do think this has kind of been an outlet for some of that, because people are like, oh, I cannot buy chicken that comes from disgusting chicken farms. I can buy free range chicken. Well, I can do that's not so hard.
Yeah, it's an action step.
Yeah.
That you can take.
Feeling morally righteous about food choices makes sense when people are giving up desired foods in order to slow climate change or prevent the abuse of workers or animals. When people also feel morally righteous about dietary choices that are primarily about the body and the self, It hints that part of North Americans' enduring interest in dietary trends is the idea that giving up desired foods is a virtuous act in its own right.
I read that and I was like, well, duh. Of course that's a part of our American ethos of food. Have you not been paying attention to the eating disorder patterns in our society and thinspiration stuff and you know, the whole
you're right.
What's the word?
Being fat has been seen
as
as
vilification of being overweight as being like a sign of moral failure. Of course, this is an idea that's in our culture.
Yeah, that being skinny is virtuous. You know,
it's a problem. It's there. It's obvious.
It is a problem. I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I do tend to think that somewhat thinner women are more attractive, but for me, the prettiest are still quite curvy. Like, honestly, I do love to see Kim Kardashian in a really tight dress. I think her body looks awesome because she's not just a thin stick with
We
no
have been
boobs.
getting better, I've noticed.
Yeah.
But like, there have been movies in the last year I was like, wow, in the 90s, she never would have gotten
curvy
that
women
far.
are hot. I mean, we've had this obsession for a while now with super skinny women, and I'm like, their bodies are, not to say that there's anything wrong with their bodies.
Yeah,
but
we don't want to just reverse the polarity
but
of the
to me,
hate machine.
but to me personally, it's not sexy for a woman to have the body of a 15-year-old boy. Like, when there's no boobs and no butt and no curves, I'm like, go eat some pie until you're hot. Like,
I was just watching I was just watching a documentary on the history of women's undergarments earlier. It was really interesting. What was it called?
it wasn't called The History of Women's Undergarments.
No. It was only like an hour. It was a lecture.
Was it like a pun? Oh.
Yes, it was a pun.
Oh, it was a pun.
I don't remember what it was called. I mean, if you search women's undergarments history lecture, you'll get it. But it was really interesting.
Yeah.
It was talking about the changes in our ideals of female beauty and how that's affected changes in undergarments.
But
I never thought about that.
For the women, there are women I know who, when you see it, it is noticeable that, I don't know, there's fat, and then there's just what, according to us, is overweight. And first of all, there's nothing wrong with being fat. You can be fat if you want, that's fine.
Yeah.
But the people I feel really
we're
bad
all
for...
it's your body, it's your right people when it comes to fat.
Yeah, you don't owe it to anyone to be what they think is attractive. You really don't.
Or healthy.
Yeah, or healthy. Yeah, but the women that sometimes, like, I don't want to be awkward, but I, like, want to be like, no, you eat what you want, you're freaking sexy. There's more than one body type. There are women who, without ever actually being what is overweight for their body, are not going to look tiny. One of the attorneys I used to work for, one time I remember she said something like, but I know I should probably watch what I eat. And I was like, should you really? I think you're hot. Like, I think you're doing fine. And she said, she's like, because she had been going to the doctor back and back and back because she had a thyroid issue and at first I think it took them a while to figure out what it was, and then they couldn't figure out how to treat it. They couldn't regulate her medicine. And so she said, I keep going back to my doctor, and like every time he'll say something to me about my weight, she's like, it makes me want to tell him, point to me on my paperwork where it's affecting my health. Because her thyroid had nothing to do with her weight. She's like, everything, my cholesterol's fine, my blood pressure's fine, like, everything's fine. Like, just because, like, on your little graph, I'm like right here, but look at my body type. And I was like, yes!
And we know other people like that too, who are like, that they're perfectly healthy, then their doctors will tell them, well, you're perfectly healthy, you just need to lose weight.
Yeah, but
and then I know other people who are overweight that the doctors would ignore, like them saying, okay, look, I've researched this, I think this might be what's wrong with them, and they just would not, they'd be like, no, you're just overweight, you just need to lose weight.
Yeah.
And they had to, like, keep going to doctors to finally get an actual diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because all these people could only see the fact that they were overweight. And they were right. It was not that they were overweight, it was this other thing.
I mean, when you think of a babushka, do you think of a skinny, scrawny little thing? No!
You die on the steps if you're scrawny.
You think of a big, not necessarily like huge, but you think of a woman of substance, like, you know what I mean?
after Tynes was born, the ability to soothe him was directly correlated to the size of one's quote-unquote pillows. Yeah.
Babies eat boobies.
Yes, they do. They think they are delicious. Well, actually, Tynes didn't, but... Because these lazy things wouldn't do their job.
But I mean, because even people who are like, I think curvy is beautiful, what they mean is like, you have big curves because the middle is so small. And then it gets, but I just think like as long as you're proportionate, I think some of those like bigger body types still, like that attorney I worked with, I mean, I'm not going to like flash a picture or body shot or anything, but it's like you look like you're healthy for exactly the body type that God gave you, and your body type looks hot, like it looks good. Like I doubt your husband complains. Like, so she couldn't eat gluten actually because the thyroid. But other than that, eat what you want. Go eat your gluten-free pie crust, which is not quite as good as regular pie crust. But
gluten, delicious gluten.
Yeah. It was kind of sad that she couldn't eat it.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I have no food allergies, and I feel sorry for people who do. My child is lactose intolerant, and it bites. He can't eat cheese, and I feel so sorry for him. I hope he grows out of it.
One time I read this article this woman was writing, and she was a woman who has safe foods. From the time she was a kid, she only liked to eat a few things, and it was a problem for her because people could not leave her alone about it. All she liked to eat, I think it was something like white bread, plain pasta, macaroni and cheese. She said, like, I've never had any health problems. I'm 100% healthy. My body does just fine. She was like, but she only had like maybe like half a dozen things she likes to eat. And then one of the other attorneys that used to work for her, like, one day was saying something about like his girlfriend and going out to eat with her, and how like expensive meals were kind of wasted on her because all she really liked to eat was like plain chicken and like plain noodles. And I was like, seafoods! I've heard of this before! But at least she's, because for the most part, she's like a super cheap date. But he was saying, sometimes like when we go to restaurants, it's actually hard for them to understand. We're like, no, she just wants the pasta, no sauce. And they're like, what? No, really.
We were kind of like that
Boil
as
it
kids.
and throw it in a bowl.
We grew out, we didn't retain it into adulthood, but we were kind of like that as kids. Remember, Mom would always make the pizza without the sauce because we wanted nothing to do with it.
I still don't like sauce very much.
We ate spaghetti without the sauce because we wanted nothing to do with it. Foods couldn't touch. We didn't have, I don't remember like safe foods. They were just bad foods. Spaghetti sauce was bad food.
If I ever figure out what brand of macaroni cheese that is that's completely bland, I'll buy like a dozen boxes and send it to this guy's girlfriend and be like, you're welcome.
That? Because you could go in.
Probably some poor old woman.
Yeah, well, it's probably the generic brand then.
Maybe it was the weirdo. Remember the widow that I was calling the weirdo?
To potluck, yes. She was trying to say widow.
But
she was little. So
that's how I thought you said widow was weirdo. And so I got in trouble for calling her a weirdo. But I was just trying to say that she was a widow. The weirdo. I got in trouble. Is that enough?
Yeah, I probably have to go anyway.
I think we might try to have a guest soon, but we can still pull one out.
Yeah. In case, we'll probably need more than a week to get a guest organized.
What?
I think we already did that, kind of, didn't we?
No, I think I put this in as a joke.
Oh, did you?
Should I stay or should I go?
Garage band style.
I actually don't even like that song.
I don't either. Well, sometimes I get it stuck in my head.
Does God force us into relationships?
That's a good one for right now. I've been thinking about that.
Good!
Because I would rather not talk to humans. And I have to talk to humans.
Yeah. Okay. I won't start talking about it right now because I always do that when we pull something out.
Good job.
Okay.
Save it.
Okay.
Gotta save it. Bottle it up. Are you bottling it up?
Yes. The message that we really want you guys to get tonight is please go eat some pie.
Yeah.
Go eat some pie right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Go and find some pie.
Go or make some pie or make someone make you some pie. Or go to the store and buy
Homemade
some
pie.
pie.